Hello. Today we just discuss about the LM curve, its derivation and its possible steps. Just like the IS curve shows the combinations of income and interest rate that lead to goods market equilibrium, or that can equate demand and supply. The LM curve also shows the combinations of income and interest rates that lead to money market equilibrium. Money market equilibrium in the sense that the total demand for money in the economy equals the total supply of money. If we follow the Keynesian framework, the demand for money can be expressed as a sum of three components: transaction demand for money, which depends positively on income; precautionary demand for money, which also depends positively on income; and the speculative demand for money, which negatively depends on the rate of interest. For simplicity, the transaction demand for money and precautionary demand for money, which both are positive function of income, can be included under LT, and the speculative demand for money can be denoted by LSP. The transaction demand for money as well as precautionary demand for money, which is included in LT, depends positively on income, and so it is a positive function of income. The speculative demand for money depends on the interest rate, and it is a negative function of interest rate. Means higher the interest rate, the less is the speculative demand for money. Money supply, on the other hand, can be assumed to be exogenously given. Thus, money market equilibrium requires that total money supply equals total money demand. Total money demand is the sum of transaction as well as precautionary demand plus speculative demand for money. On the basis of this concept of money market equilibrium, we derive the LM curve by using a 4-panel figure. So this 4-panel figure shows the derivation of LM curve from the equality of total demand for money and money supply. So the panel A shows the speculative demand for money curve, which is a negatively sloped curve showing that it is inversely related with the rate of interest. Higher the interest rate, the lower is the speculative demand for money. Panel B shows money market equilibrium, in which the total money supply of 400 is measured in x-axis as well as y-axis. So 400 is the total supply of money, which is shown in both axes, x-axis and y-axis. Panel C shows the transaction demand for money. Transaction demand for money depends positively on income, so the transaction demand for money is a positively sloped curve. And panel D shows the derivation of LM curve. To derive the LM curve, suppose that initially the interest rate in the economy is at 10%. At 10% interest rate, the speculative demand for money is 100. The speculative demand for money is 100. So now, given the money supply of 400, for the demand for money to be equal to supply of money, if speculative demand is 100, the rest 300 should be transaction demand for money, which is shown by this distance 300. So if 100 is the speculative demand for money, the transaction demand for money must be 300, and for 300 transaction demand for money, income level must be maintained, say at 3000. So we get a point F at which the rate of interest is 10% and income level is 3000, which can maintain the equality of demand for money and supply of money in this panel. So this is a point that can maintain money market equilibrium, and it lies in the LM curve. So here we have assumed that the total transaction demand for money is 10% of income level. So when income level is 3000, transaction demand per money is, it's a 10%, that is 300. So now consider that the rate of interest falls from 10% to 5%. At a lower interest rate, the speculative demand for money increases from 100 to 200. Now, given the speculative demand for money of 200, transaction demand for money must be 200, so that the total money supply 400 is equal to total speculative demand 200 plus transaction demand 200. So in this case, transaction demand should be 200. So this is shown by this distance. This is transaction demand for money, and this is transaction demand for money. This 200 equals this 200. So for 200 transaction demand for money, income must be 2000. Again, we have assumed that out of 2000, 10% goes to transaction demand for money, and transaction demand for money in this case becomes 200. So now we get another point E at which rate of interest is 5% and the money market is in equilibrium at income 2000. So this is another point of the LM curve. By joining the point E and point F, we get an upward sloping LM curve. So the LM curve passes through the points like E and F, which can maintain the demand and supply of money equality in this panel. Now in this figure we see that the shape of speculative demand for money and the shape of LM curve are almost similar, except the fact that the LM curve is just look like a mirror shape of the speculative demand for money curve. Indeed, this is true. The LM curve and its shape depends on the shape of the LSP curve. The LM curve is just like a mirror image of the LSP curve when mirror is placed on the vertical axis. So if we keep a mirror here and look the LSP curve on the mirror, its shape look just like this curve. So the shape of the LM curve and the shape of the LSP curves, they are related to each other to some extent. So now the next question is why this LM curve is always positively sloped for normal range of interest rate. By saying normal rate of interest rate, I mean for very high interest rate and exceptionally low interest rate, the shape of the LM curve may not be positively sloped. So for the normal interest rates, the shape of LM curve is upward sloping. Why this is so? So to explain this, let us analyze the point G and see whether LM curve passed through G and F or not. At point G, income level is 2000, so transaction demand is 200. And at point G, interest rate is 10% and LSP is 100. So at point G, transaction demand is 200. At point D, speculative demand is 100. So the total demand for money is 200 plus 100 is 300, which is less than the total money supply of 400. So at point Z, demand for money is less than supply of money, and this is not a money market equilibrium point. So LM curve cannot pass through the point G and F and be horizontal because Z is not a point of money market equilibrium. So again consider the point H. At point H, income level is 3000, so transaction demand for money is 300. At point H, the interest rate is 5% and the speculative demand is 200. So transaction demand 300 plus speculative demand 200. The total demand is 500, whereas total money supply is 400 only. So in such a point like as, the total demand for money is 500 where the supply is 400. So demand for money exceeds the supply of money, and this is again not a point that lead to money market equilibrium. So a LM curve cannot pass through G and H and become downward sloping. It cannot pass through F and H and become vertical, because at least one of the points in such a case will be a disequilibrium point. In this sense, the LM curve is always an upward sloping curve. So in summary, we can say that at each point to the left of the LM curve, demand for money is less than supply of money, and at each point to the right of the LM curve, demand for money is greater than supply of money. We can remember this point in a very shortcut way. Compare the equilibrium maintaining point F and G. In comparison to F, at point G, income level is lower. So lower income level means demand for money is low. So that is why at point G, demand for money is low in comparison to F. That is, money demand is less than money supply. Again, compare the point H with the equilibrium point E. In comparison to E, H has a higher level of income, means higher level of transaction demand. So at point H, demand for money will be greater than supply of money. Thank you for watching this video.